Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Port Charles was about to explode, and nobody felt the pressure more than Jenz Sidwell. From the moment he stepped back into the shadows of city politics, he made one thing crystal clear: he wasn't there to negotiate, he was there to control. And the first person to feel that control tightening around her throat was Mayor Laura Collins. Laura had prepared her press conference carefully. Drew Cain's sudden removal from his congressional seat had left a vacuum, and she intended to recommend Alexis Davis as a stabilizing replacement. Alexis was experienced, composed, and most importantly, predictable. But Sidwell had other ideas. When he entered her office unannounced, his presence shifted the air. "You'll announce Willow Cain," he told her flatly. Laura's spine stiffened. "That isn't up for discussion." "It is," Sidwell replied, his voice calm but edged with steel. "You want funding for your waterfront project, you want federal cooperation, you want peace." He stepped closer. "Then you will say Willow's name." Laura hated the bargain, but she knew exactly how much power Sidwell had behind the curtain. She had spent decades navigating mob bosses and Cassadine princes, and yet this felt different, political, calculated, surgical. By the time the press conference aired, Port Charles would be blindsided. And Alexis Davis would be humiliated. Meanwhile, at the PCPD, another explosion was building. Michael Corinthos had just walked out of interrogation, and he was furious. He'd been questioned about Drew's situation, about the mysterious key found on his keychain, about whether he had broken into Drew's apartment. But the detail that sent his blood boiling: Wiley had seen Harrison Chase holding his father's keys. The image replayed in Michael's mind over and over again. He found Chase outside, near the Metro Court, Brooklyn Quartermain standing protectively at his side. "You planted that key," Michael accused, his voice shaking with rage. Chase blinked. "What are you talking about?" "You had my keys, my son saw you." Brooklyn stepped forward. "Michael, stop, you're out of line." Michael didn't hear her. He swung. The punch landed squarely on Chase's jaw, sending him stumbling backward. Gasps erupted from nearby onlookers. Brooklyn screamed Chase's name, dropping to her knees beside him. Michael stood over them, breathing hard. "You framed me." But as Chase wiped blood from his lip, confusion, not guilt, filled his eyes. Michael had just made a dangerous enemy. And somewhere across town, Willow Cain watched it all unfold in silence. Willow was juggling more than anyone realized. The children, the hospital visits, the secret. And Drew. Locked away in a carefully concealed location, Drew remained under sedation, the drug administered precisely, methodically. Willow told herself it was necessary. Drew couldn't be trusted, not with what he knew, not with what he might reveal. She adjusted the IV line with steady hands. "This is for the greater good," she whispered. But was it? As she drove home to tuck Wiley and Amelia into bed, her phone buzzed with alerts. Laura Collins had just recommended her for Congress. Willow froze. She hadn't expected the move to happen so quickly. Sidwell worked fast. Very fast. And suddenly, her world was expanding beyond Port Charles. Across town, Maxie Jones was fighting a very different battle, one of the heart. Nathan West stood before her as solid and familiar as ever, the love of her life, the man she had mourned. But Damian Spinelli still hovered in her orbit, loyal, devoted, steady. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do," Maxie admitted, tears threatening. Nathan reached for her hand. "You follow your heart." Later, Spinelli confided in Lulu Spencer. "She's going to choose him," Spinelli said softly. "I know it." Lulu squeezed his arm. "That doesn't mean you stop fighting." Spinelli smiled sadly. "Sometimes love means letting go." Port Charles thrived on impossible choices. And Maxie's would break someone. At the Quartermain mansion, Cody Bell finished Molly Lansing Davis' manuscript and closed the final page with awe. "She nailed it," he said, "the character he grows." Molly hesitated. "You really think so?" "I know so. You should take the deal." For once, Molly allowed herself to imagine success without fear. A rare bright spot in a city spiraling toward chaos. Elsewhere, Jason Morgan faced pressure from another direction. Ross Cullum's questions had been pointed, threatening. Jason updated Britt Westbourne, whose sharp mind immediately calculated the danger. "You're being cornered," Britt warned. Jason met with Sonny Corinthos shortly after. "We have a problem," Jason told him. Cullum wasn't just fishing. He was hunting. And if Jason didn't move first, the consequences could be fatal. Meanwhile, Lucas Jones uncovered startling information that didn't sit right. When he pressed Marco Rios for answers, tension flared. "You're not telling me everything," Lucas accused. Marco bristled. "Maybe you don't want to know everything." Secrets were rotting relationships from the inside out. And Lucas feared theirs might not survive. Back at City Hall, Alexis Davis received the news. Willow Cain's recommended for Congress. Her face drained of color. She confronted Laura immediately. "Why?" Alexis demanded. Laura hesitated. It was the best move for the city. But Alexis saw something else in her eyes. Fear. And fear was spreading. Lucy Coe had been snooping, digging into Sidwell's background, and when he caught wind of it, his response was icy. "You're playing a dangerous game, Lucy." She forced a smile. "I prefer to call it curiosity." But Sidwell didn't smile back. As the week drew to a close, Willow stood alone in the dark, staring at Drew's still form. The drug coursed steadily. Her political future brightened. Michael spiraled. Alexis grew suspicious. And Sidwell tightened his grip. Port Charles was changing. And Willow Cain was at the center of it. The following week began with tremors. Alexis couldn't shake her suspicion. The key on Michael's keychain. Chase's confusion. Willow's sudden rise. It was too convenient. She replayed every conversation, every detail. Then it hit her. What if Chase hadn't planted the key? What if Willow had? The realization chilled her. Willow had access, motive, opportunity. And if she had framed Chase to protect herself? Alexis began digging quietly. Meanwhile, Willow's double life intensified. She attended meetings about her congressional appointment, smiling, poised, composed. Then she slipped away to administer Drew's next dose. Her hands trembled slightly this time. Was she losing control? Or gaining too much? Michael confronted her one evening. "You believe me, right?" he asked, "about Chase." Willow held his gaze. "Yes," she said softly. But guilt flickered behind her eyes. At the PCPD, Ada Justine Turner warned Dante Falconry. "No mistakes this time," she insisted. "Drew's case has already suffered enough." Dante nodded. "We'll get it right." But they didn't know Drew was alive. Sedated. Hidden. Elsewhere, Gio Palmieri received stunning news. Emma Scorpio Drake was coming home. Joy lit his face, one of the few pure emotions left in Port Charles. But not all reunions would be joyful. Rocco Falconry innocently mentioned something about Valentin Cassadine's hideout. The wrong person overheard. And suddenly Valentin's safety and Carly Spencer's alliance with him was at risk. Carly confronted Valentin. "You promised me this was secure." Valentin's jaw tightened. Nothing is ever secure. Their partnership, built on mutual benefit, began to fracture. Jason felt the walls closing in. Cullum remained relentless. And subtle groundwork began for Jason's departure. Late at night, he met Britt again. "If things go south," he told her, "you protect yourself." Britt's eyes softened. "When have I ever done that?" Jason allowed himself the smallest smile. But danger followed him like a shadow. Back at City Hall, Willow took her seat. The applause felt surreal. She had everything she'd claimed to want. Power, influence, control. But Alexis watched from the crowd. And she knew. Something was terribly wrong. Later, Alexis confronted Willow quietly. "You planted that key, didn't you?" Willow's composure didn't crack. "I don't know what you're talking about." But Alexis saw it. The shift. The darkness. And she realized Port Charles had underestimated Willow Cain. As the 2 weeks came to an end, alliances shifted. Maxie leaned toward Nathan's. Spinelli prepared his heart for heartbreak. Michael's anger simmered. Chase's reputation hung in the balance. Sidwell stood victorious for now. But the real storm was only beginning. Because Willow Cain was no longer the sweet nurse everyone believed her to be. She was strategic, calculated, and willing to cross lines no one imagined. And if Alexis uncovered the truth about Drew, everything would burn. Port Charles stood on the brink. Highs, lows, betrayals, power plays. The next chapter would decide who survived and who fell.